You're late.
I don't for a very important date. No time to say goodbye. Hello, I'm late.
This is fun for me. My mom had like certain signature phrases, and one of them was, "What do you think this is? Fun and games?" And today I was like, "Yes, Mom.
This is fun and games." We're sponsored by StreamYard. Go to cbrogan.me/StreamYard. You can have a show just like this, only good. And that would be really good. So cbrogan.me/StreamYard. What? This could be the best show ever. Who would really know?
Hi, John.
Backpack Show. Did you not hear the intro?
No, I guess I didn't. I've learned that there is no safe time for me to take a drink of my my coffee or anything. So
I saw it, but I didn't hear it. Did we break something?
No, I heard it. Everything was fine. Maybe you broke you. We're all fine.
We're fine here.
Hi, Kate.
How are you?
Diane, Amanda. So today literally is all fun and games. We've got the retro gaming and we've got new slick video games.
Futuristic gaming.
That teach medical professionals how to do things, including diagnostics and procedures. Hi, Stephen. And they look incredible.
Amazing. You've never wanted to play a colon video game ever as much as this.
So Sam Glassenberg and Level X, they have on staff not only game designers and developers, but medical professionals who will say things like, it's like squishier than that. It's you need more blood. And they make it as realistic as possible. It's amazing. I think we might even get to see some of that stuff today. And we have the Wares, who are the retro gaming. They build these cool custom retro game systems that you can have in your house, which I want. Which is a whole other story. But
so
that's awesome. How I found them, actually.
All right, I'm dragging. You were just shopping into the shopping cart.
Yeah.
All right, let's bring Sam Glassenberg on first. Hey, Sam, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Woo! I don't know.
Living the dream. Living the dream. It's always
right. Living someone else's dream. Sam, you started this like the way real people should start in video games, by making frivolous time waster video games that people love and remember for the rest of their lives before you went grown up and all that. Do you want to talk just a tiny bit about the early days?
The early days. Well, the earliest days were at Lucasfilm, making LucasArts, making Star Wars games. So
you know what's interesting, by the way, when I saw at least what you have in your LinkedIn, it was kind of like you were the bottleneck fixer there. Is that is that accurate?
I was pretty much. I had I went to school for engineering. Like I'm a computer engineer, computer science programmer, but I was hired as an artist at Lucas. I was actually hired as an animator. My job was to fly spaceships for the cutscenes between the levels in the episode 2 video games. So I was like an engineer working on the art team, which was rare, like hadn't happened before. And so I'm sitting there with like a bunch of artists that are running into all sorts of limitations of what the software could do. And I was like, oh, wait, I think I can fix that. We can use math for that. And so that's how I ended up sort of shifting my career a little bit.
Did all that impress your parents?
No, not well. I mean, it's not medicine. There's you know, my parents are doctors, and you know, my grandfather and everyone in my family. I come from a family of doctors, so there's medicine, and then there's, you know, everything else.
Kara's joining us from Scotland. Hi, Kara. Hi, Don.
One thing I was thinking about, you know, when I saw that sort of curve in the road is, like you said, you were hired to do mostly art, but you kind of quickly jumped in and figured out some of this stuff. You then go into Microsoft, and there's a little bit of a curve in the road of Microsoft where you have to work on some grown-up things, which looks like kind of like normalizing interfaces or something like that. Is that?
That is a boring way to think about it.
Help me. Make it better.
My job at Microsoft, let me be clear. My job at Microsoft is to figure out how we build the Matrix. Right? How do we make video games look real? That was my team's job at Microsoft. That's what we were doing. So
was that after Bob, or was that before Bob? You know,
which that, Bob?
97? No, remember 97? Bob. They made Bob. Yeah,
that was like the bad Matrix, the bad future. We don't want to know. No, so you know, like if you think about it, so at Lucas, my job was to figure out how we make sure technology, you know, that the capabilities of the software doesn't get in the way of what artists want to achieve, right? Because you're sitting there, you got the most talented artists, animators, concept artists, 3D modelers in the world. It's Lucasfilm, right? We're literally getting the assets from, you know, from ILM, right? From Star Wars, coming off the movie to go put them into the video game, right? Like top stuff. How do we make sure that the limitations of, you know, the PlayStation 2 doesn't prevent artists from achieving what they want to achieve? And my job at Microsoft was basically, my team's job was basically to say, all right, look, if we go 10 years out, right? Because gaming hardware has about a 5-year planning development cycle. If we go 10 years out, right? What do we want to be able to achieve in video games that we can't achieve today? And what do we need in order to be able to do that, right? What software, what hardware, what tools do we need in order for, you know, whatever artists want to create? They want to create more realistic characters, better looking shadows, denser vegetation. Like, how do we make video game characters and environments look real? So a visionary artist in the games industry can come up with any idea of a game that they want with however much detail, and the limitation of what the experience they can deliver is not the hardware itself, right? It's just their imagination. So that was my job at Microsoft. We also a lot of fun.
You did a much better job explaining it than I would have.
I'm gonna say you offended him. Everybody's having a really good time in the comments.
They're all very good morning-y in the comments.
Yeah, they're greeting your mom.
What is this, Romper Room?
Yes, that's exactly what it is.
Romper Room.
Anybody just joining, we're actually talking about video games today, not just saying good morning to everyone. But
Sam Glassenberg from Level X is here.
Good morning, Sam Glassenberg.
You have done some interesting things with Level X. I don't really want to skip your, you know, licensed properties or anything like that, but I am interested in the jump from still in the very fun side of fun, but now you're running a company and whatnot, and then you move to medicine. Do you want to cover that just a tiny bit for us?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, after Microsoft, I ran a company that made games for Hollywood movies. So we did like the first movie-based game on Facebook, some of the first movie-based and TV-based games on mobile, on iPhone, for stuff like Hunger Games, Mission Impossible, Power Rangers. And then after that, I started Level X, which makes video games for doctors. And that company I basically started by accident.
You started Level X by accident.
It happens to me all the time. I found companies by accident.
You were,
and they become wildly successful. Completely.
So I think we talked earlier, right? My parents. So I come from this family of doctors. From, you know, I mean, my grandfather was a famous doctor, and my wife and my aunts and my uncles and my parents, and I'm the kind of the disgrace that never went to medical school. And so it's just, I have terrible stories that I can tell another time or maybe later. But back in 2012, my daddy's an anesthesiologist here in Chicago at Northwestern. And he goes, all right, Sam, put all this video game nonsense to good use and make me a game to train my colleagues to do this procedure. It's called a fiber optic intubation. We only do this on rare, difficult patients. So even experienced anesthesiologists can struggle with this if they haven't done enough cases. He goes, make me a game that they can just train on their phones. I don't want to have to drag anybody to a training center. Just let them play on their phones. So I sit down for a few weekends with some video game tech, because I'm busy running a Hollywood game company. So like I have a day job, but out of guilt, I sit down for my dad and I do him this favor. I make him this game, teach how to do this. And I spend 3 weekends on it. It's terrible. And I upload it to the App Store because I'm, too busy running a game company to install it on his friends' iPhones every time they want it. So he's like, here's the web App Store link. Just download it. They can download it themselves. Leave me alone. I think I put in an email address I never check. And I didn't think about it again. And then 2 years later in 2014, he goes, hey, Sam, how many people downloaded the game? I go, I have no idea, but I'll check. And I went and I looked, and we had 100,000 doctors, nurses, and airway specialists who've been playing this thing. So I had by accident created like one of the most popular medical training simulators ever, at which point I Google it and I discover that they've been doing efficacy studies on this crappy little game at various medical schools around the world that show it's improving physician performance. So at that point, I'm like, all right, this is clearly there's demand for something like this. And that was the motivation. After my last company was acquired, that was the motivation for starting Level X.
It's pretty nuts, really. I mean, John Harrison had written something about, low frequency, high criticality, which is the perfect candidate for a game for this case. It's interesting, like you say, that by accident, this, fiber optic intubation becomes the first part of this, because, if you were going to set out to design, you're right, it's by mistake or by happy accidents, because if you were going to design
invention.
if you were going to design a video game company, you would least say, let's start with sticking a fiber optic tube down someone's throat. You would least say, let's launch with this not interesting thing. You would most definitely pay researchers to do what they did for free for you by proving that efficacy. So it all rolls in kind of backwards, doesn't it?
Yeah, usually what happens is companies will, build a product and then they'll try to get market traction. With Level X, it was the opposite. We got the market traction first. And then we're like, oh, wow, doctors really need this. Wait a minute. What happens if we actually do this right? And we take the top game developers, designers, artists in the industry, team them up with, the top physicians and surgeons in their fields, and have them work together to capture the challenges of the practice of medicine as video game mechanics.
I know this is a little bit of a sticky spot, but I'm going to put it up anyway. Gamification can help in so many areas. What you do, though, Sam, is not gamification.
Right. Yeah, there's this. Look, here's the problem. Gamification is this sort of stigmatized. I don't like to use the term because every time it's used for something terrible. Basically, and it's not to mean that like it's a bad word. It just, every time we think about gamification, right? What does it usually mean? It's usually somebody taking something that isn't fun, or maybe isn't even interactive, and saying, oh, we're going to make it fun. We're going to gamify it. Let me think. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take something that's, boring, and I'll tack on a quiz, or I'll tack on some badges, and then that's going to make it fun, right? I'm going to scrape off the shallow, most obvious layer of what the games industry is doing, tack it onto something boring, and all of a sudden that boring thing is going to be fun. And that doesn't really work, or at least if it does, it's very incremental, right? We're talking about actually making games and doing real game design. There's incredible depth here, right? Like you've got, game designers sitting there, we've been testing this on over 1 billion players for the last 3 decades, right? Understanding how do you balance reward and frustration? How do you balance the challenge relative to the player skill over time to keep the dopamine releasing at the right frequency to keep them in a flow state, right? Like incredibly complex systems based on neuroscience and economics. Like this is what goes into a modern video game. When people are talking about gamification, they're usually often the people that are, hawking gamification don't even know about that stuff.
That's like how I used to tell my kids, hey, go and get like my stuff for me from the office. I'll time you.
That's gamification.
That's actually, even adding a timing element at least makes it a little bit more,
Yeah,
exactly. We didn't invent that in the games industry. Yeah. Like the same way we didn't invent badges. We stole badges from the Girl Scouts. Like this isn't, like a leaderboard. Leaderboards have existed in like the sales, in product sales for like 150 years. We didn't like. This is not video games. This is.
But Don has a point, though. What he's actually saying is that the principles that cause us to learn kind of accidentally while we're playing video games, those work with any topic. So they work.
Exactly. So that's if you're really delving, like, I don't mean to hone on the word that's being used, but if you say like, yes, video game design and technology can help in so many areas, completely true, right? Like we have distilled in the games industry an incredibly potent recipe for how to enable sort of skill development and learning at scale.
Don says
simulation all over the place in game, right? There's a reason why every 10-year-old in the country can name 50 Pokemon characters and give you their entire backstory and can't show you where France is on the map, right? Exactly. Games are incredibly good at educating as an indirect or unintended consequence of play.
Kara says when creative people come together with science, amazing things happen. So she is absolutely correct. Kate, don't Google Level X. We've got the website for you right here. Levelx.com.
So I have one last question before we put you backstage again, Sam, but this has been fun. What is currently the sort of Level X Angry Birds? What's the massive seller over at Level X?
Can
And
we
also,
I want to see
yeah,
it.
can we take a little look about one of
Oh
your
yeah, I
games?
mean, I'm happy to show you stuff. We actually, I mean, ironically, if you want to say Angry Birds, we actually have a
Angry
have a
colon.
game.
Say it's Angry colon.
We can do Angry Colon if you want. Yeah, we'll do that. Here, hold on 1 second. Let me pull up my phone. Here.
He's really gonna do it.
It's a really weird sentence to say, but Sam's colon demo is one of my favorites.
Yeah, there's things you only hear on the episode with Sam. All right, here, let me put this is my phone. I just put my phone behind me. And so yeah, so we have a game that kind of even looks like Angry Birds. It's actually a game where you dose an inhaled anesthetic. Only instead of using a slingshot, you're using the dials on the anesthesia machine, and you're trying to get that curve to you're trying to get the patient under before the propofol wears off. It's very Angry Birds-esque. But
wow.
Someone's saying yeah. So here, this is our gastroenterology game because you asked for the colon game.
Don't listen to me.
We have a cardiology game. We have a quarter of the interventional cardiologists in the country are playing our cardiology game. So we have 600,000 medical professionals playing this stuff now. So we're just filled with dozens of rare cases. Like I said, capturing the interesting someone said something about capturing the rare or the infrequent, right? So this is definitely the infrequent. These are once in a lifetime cases. There's some really rare and interesting stuff in here. You can earn CME, it's the only video game you can earn continuing medical education credit for playing a video game.
Continuing ed credit for video games.
Yeah, you can renew. It's for renewing your medical license. All right, so here, we'll just jump in. So I'm just doing this here on my phone. Yeah, but it's not a video.
Colon of duty.
This is a totally interactive. It's a very clean colon.
It's a very clean colon.
I can show you in our pulmonology game. I got some levels in there with lots of mucus. It's really.
Oh yeah.
Can you adjust the level of mucus as the?
Oh yeah, we have for testing purposes, we built a full on medical grade booger gun. You can just fire boogers anywhere and just to test the mucus system.
Oh, Chris.
But yeah, so this is a totally interactive patient. This patient, it's squishy.
Right.
I can just grab tissue just like I would when you hold your hand up to a flashlight and it glows. That's what happens because it's thin tissue, and I can just I can pull it around. This is a polypectomy, so you got to find the precancerous polyps that'll hide behind folds. So sometimes you want to use different tools to push them around.
It's telling you damaged tissue and stuff.
Oh yeah. We'll get some blood going here. Hold on. So I got a polyp. So this is like a hidden object game. You got to find all the polyps that hide behind folds. But this one's sort of out in the open, and I'll grab it. What I don't realize is this is a rare condition where the polyp embeds on a blood vessel. Oh. When I remove it, I trigger a bleed emitter inside the body.
Wow.
And here, so we have full. This is the real challenge gets in. This is 3D computational fluid dynamics running on your phone.
Look at that.
Thing that drops your calls all the time. So here I can spray water, right? Because I have a water jet in my endoscope, and I can spray water to try to get it to stop bleeding and go back to the source of the bleed. But it just keeps coming. All it does is dilute the blood. All right, so we'll do Chris.
Here, wait, hold
on. We haven't unlocked hemoclips yet. You want argon plasma or epinephrine?
Oh, I'm a big epinephrine fan.
You want to phone a friend?
I mean, everybody needs a hobby. So here, I'll go and I'll inject some epinephrine with my endoscopic endoscopic syringe. And good job, good call. So it caused the blood vessels to constrict and the bleeding stop.
I'm a surgeon.
So, objective achievement. Well done, sir. You saved the bleeding patient. So here now we've got this nasty pool of blood and water. So there's a bunch of polyps hiding in there. You don't want me to have to go find those. So here I can just cauterize any. This is the argon plasma coagulator. I can just cauterize anywhere until that changes.
That's some Star Trek stuff.
And now you
that's a real thing. There's an actual plasma. In video games, we have plasma rifles, but those are imaginary. In Level X, we have real plasma rifles. They're very small, but they actually they superheat plasma to cauterize tissue. So you actually have this little lightning effect as you move close to the surface of the tissue. It's super cool.
So you need top-notch game designers and developers and medical professionals who've actually seen this stuff so they can tell you what it's supposed to look like.
Oh, exactly. And it's not just what it looks like, because it looks like we can look from videos.
Sure.
How does it behave? Right?
What's going to happen?
You need to puncture that, right? Exactly what happened. Oh, this crazy thing that, how much force would it take to puncture a vocal cord with a laryngoscope? Oh, you'd never want to do that. but okay, how much? Like, we need to know. We want to let people make mistakes.
Right.
So these are the kinds of, interesting questions that only come up in the, internal conversations between doctors and game developers at Level X.
You know what? So Deanna raised a point, and I apologize ahead of time, Deanna. She said, I'm glad I was already eating breakfast to finish that one. I should have probably said trigger warning. There's, going to be some blood and colon coming up.
Too late now. So
my bad on that one. If you want even more of that kind of misery, you can go to levelx.com and check out some other cool software. Sam Glassenberg was here. Thank you so much, Sam. If you can stick around, please do.
Will do.
We've got more to do to you. So hang out, get a drink. Lord, shush. All right. And now, this is funny because
absolutely no trigger warnings for this. No blood.
You don't need any trigger warnings. This is all 8-bit. You're going to live. Michael and Michelle Ware, how the heck are you?
Good.
Awesome. Thanks for having us.
Hey,
they are in Bernie, California. Bernie, California. But
founders of Dream Arcades.
Yeah.
Little smoky.
Yeah.
You make, for the most part, stand-up and cocktail cabinets, although I did notice you even make one of those claw machine toy setups as well. Which is that one of your newer devices compared to the arcade cabinets?
Yeah, that's the newest device. It's set up for home use, doctor use. So there's like a kid always win mode where, maybe if you're good and at the dentist office or your kids are good for the day, you give them the token, but they get to play till they win.
Oh, very nice.
So we always try to, our products, we always try to think about who our customers are and do something that's different.
That's smart. I can see that sort of, you'd mentioned that you sell some stuff in the corporate setting as well. And I can imagine you doing a scenario where, there's gifts that the company decided to put in there for some of their better performers.
Promotional.
Yeah.
We did one for, was it Barefoot Wine?
Yeah, Barefoot Wine.
And it was actually for employees, but they wanted to work together. So one employee had to do the left and right, and one had to do the up and down. So they had to work together for kind of a teamwork type thing in order to get the prize.
It must be really hard to get that bottle of wine out with the claw. As it happens, I'm a claw machine master, so I would need you to like tweak it to the difficulty level up for me.
There's all kinds of different settings. Yeah, they're basically a scam. So we by default set ours up so it's skill based rather than some of them you can actually say, hey, only win 25% of the time. So no matter how good you are, you may not win.
Just going to share a little love for Sam because people are super into Sam and they love what he had to say. So I just want him to know everyone loves him. Super excited. All right, everyone. The Wares. Let's talk retro game. How did you start out? So you make these systems. I think originally, Michael, you were making them in the garage.
Yeah. The first one I made was for Michelle as a Christmas present. I think that was back in 2002.
Yeah, that's correct.
And she's a big Miss Pac-Man fan. I like a lot of the other games. So we built one that could play lots of different games. And this is based on the Mamie emulator. There are other people doing it and there are other companies doing it, but they were like 8,000 and 9,000. And we just thought,
Uh-oh. Did we freeze? I think maybe we froze. And Chris, you're muted. So I'm going to just take the Wares out of the stream and put them back in a minute. But first,
are we back?
You're back.
Oh, there we are.
All right. Where did we finish off? I was building one for Michelle for Christmas, right?
Yeah, Miss Pac-Man.
And some friends saw it. They liked it. And they, oh, you got to help me build one. So I helped him build one. And then his friend saw it and his friend's like, oh, you have to help me build it. I'm like, I'm not helping your friend build one. Like, we'll pay. And so I'm like, oh, well, maybe that might work. And the time I was working as an engineer at Intel, systems engineer, and they was going through all these cutbacks. So they were like trying to find ways to cut back, and they let me take a lot of time off. And they're really supportive of it. And we did that for right now the business for how many years?
We've been doing it now total.
Yeah, but how many years were we in the house?
Oh goodness, like 5.
Yeah,
probably?
I mean, it got to the point where I was submitting our taxes, and our accountant's like, "You're trying to write off 35% of your house as a business expense." I'm like, "No, really. There's like arcades in the hallway.
You can't use it for anything else. I'm serious."
Yeah. So we finally grew, and now we've got like a 5,000 square foot facility, and
8 employees.
Yeah, 8 to 10 employees depending on the time of the year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So did Michelle guilt
So-
you into building it originally? Because if so, I'm seeing a theme today. Just like guilt leads people to create these
I
amazing
don't think
things.
so, right?
Michael's a big gamer, so like our closet is filled with the old like Commodores, Atari, like overflowing with all the old systems. So he used to take the systems apart when he was a kid, and then put them back together, and that's kind of how that started. I love Miss Pac-Man. That was my thing. And then, like he said, he wanted all the different games, like the fighting games, is what he was more into than me.
Like Mortal Kombat and stuff.
No, I'd say before that, like Karate Champ. I'm like
Old school.
the golden age stuff, like pre 85.
What was the biggest challenge for you then? Oh, Chris, you're muted.
On purpose, I was asking Harold a question in the background, but hey, I'll ask it to you guys. Doesn't matter, Harold. It's all good. So yeah, I was just trying to back up my lack of knowledge. My son and I went to a conference or a convention, I guess, where there was a whole bunch of people doing not just the cabinet stuff. Some people brought their like old timey classic favorite video games, and we got to play some really old games and all that. But there were a lot of cabinet vendors of different kinds, and to your point, the prices go up as high as well past $8,000. But the other thing, which is interesting, because when I looked over your site, I started pouring through the frequently asked questions. So if I look like this, like, for the part of this, I was looking to see when and where you address the sort of license issue of Maymay game ROMs and all that sort of a thing. And what you say, what you state is, we have licenses to install the ones that we have. They're all licensed games. But the ROM space is interesting because a lot of people don't fully understand the allowed usage of ROMs and that sort of a thing. And so I was, I guess, looking at, it must be fun for you to be able to very proudly say, we're doing this all above board, because anyone can make one of these, that replicates in such a way that anyone can install anything on it, basically.
Yeah, 60-in-1 boards, and
Yeah. So you're saying this is why we do it this way. This is how we do it this way. Here's the, when you buy this upgrade, of course, some of your money is going to the licensing fee and all that. That's was that an idea right out of the gate, or did you get a wrist slapped, or how did that work when you decided this is how we're going to do it?
I mean, we had hoped that it would grow and become a big business, so we knew, that we couldn't, cut any corners. And I always wanted to be able to, tell people I've never installed an unlicensed ROM. So that's kind of like a badge of honor with us. So we do that. The arcades are all set up. All the games are licensed, and then people can add their own games after once they get it home. So we kind of, put a little warning with that, like, and the funny thing is, even when we talk to our IP attorney, they help 2 or 3 attorneys, and each of them has a different opinion on what's acceptable and what isn't.
That's pretty difficult.
Yeah. So we can't even really provide advice to people because it's, even though these are the 70s, 80s, 90s games, there still hasn't not a lot of case law on it.
It's tough sometimes too with a lot of times the copyright is uncertain, like things change hands a lot, or companies dissolve and their assets get acquired. Nobody's even sure like who owns it. And it's pretty unlikely somebody would come for you. You like orphan works, basically.
Yeah, that's a huge problem. But it's not only that, but when you look at the video games, so you have orphan works, of course, where no one knows who owns it. But there's also a lot of times where people own different parts. So I remember Atari had the Batman movie, but they said, we gave you rights for the arcade, not to the whole game. So they had to then pull the game. A lot of times people would be like, oh, well, we borrowed this sound subsystem from another company. So they can't actually emulate the game with the sounds. So there's sometimes multiple licensees involved, and it makes it very difficult.
No, absolutely. We've got a lot of people interested in that. John Harrison says he loves how it's legit and licensed and it's a value add, in his opinion. And Kara says that this is how a lot of businesses start. You do something for a friend and then it snowballs. Or you do what your wife wants, which is probably good practice. And it turns out to be the best idea ever.
Right. Especially with 2 daughters. So he needs to get used to agreeing to all 3 of our demands.
So Michelle, you were a Ms. Pac-Man person. Michael, did you have a go-to arcade experience, or do you approach this at a different mindset? Like, were you a quarter stacker, or are you just like
no? You know what? My mom was very cheap, so I was the kid in like Chuck E. Cheese digging in the ball pit trying to find more tokens. So like yeah, so I played a lot of different games. I'd say probably Pole Position and Star Wars were my two favorites. But I mean I would like Karate Champ and Paperboy, and I mean a lot of these Simpsons, a lot of the beat 'em up type things, Ninja Turtles. Yeah.
We were talking about a friend of mine, and I actually Collins, who I'm so surprised isn't here, Bob Collins. We were talking about the fact that we lost so much money to Dragon's Lair because we couldn't, we couldn't figure that game out. We really wanted to know where it was going, and so we're just, and it was like the most expensive thing in the arcade, and we were just like funding that company, I think, for a while. Because
a lot of places charge 50 cents. Yeah. So
exactly.
I actually my younger brother worked for me for how many years, like 6 or 7. And he finally got to the point where he could beat Dragon's Lair, and I was just like, man, I paid you to learn how to beat the game.
This is an
but
interesting
it was still
question.
fun to watch, especially you get to the last scene and it's a blast.
Dragon's Lair. Yeah, I'll never know. How much have your sales increased since COVID started?
They are up a little. One thing though that has happened, so you get a lot of people who are like thinking about buying, but they're like, oh, now's the time. I'll keep the kids busy. But also we do a lot of custom work, a lot of corporate work, a lot of shows. So we had how many shows for South by? How many arcades for South? 9 arcades going to South by Southwest, and then that show got canceled. Fortunately, all the vendors paid, but no corporate work out. Well, we have one right now. For a movie studio, but except for that, we've had only one corporate arcade. So we've lost. That was a big portion. So we are up a little bit, but it's it's almost like you work harder to make the same amount of money.
Wow, that sounds like everybody's last several months only physically. Well, I mean, but there's another thing, and I don't want to make you even more depressed because it's too early for you to change that drink out for a wine, but there's a lot of inventory management.
You could get it though, the claw machine. You just have to like try a bunch of times.
We've had a terrible time.
Right? Yeah.
Inventory management.
Terrible time with inventory management. Yeah, trying to get stuff from overseas, and I can't go overseas anymore.
Right. Yeah, no, when Harold and I did a few projects here where we were making RetroPie things, and Harold's my 14-year-old son, we were making a lot of RetroPie games, and what we would do a lot was, we would buy the actual arcade buttons, and one of the things that people wouldn't know until they really thought it through for a minute is you're saying, yeah, we make these cool cabinets. They're not thinking about the extra durability. They're not thinking about the industrial kind of strength of a cabinet that's going to have a few hundred people messing with it, not not just 2 kids at home that you could fight if they break something. So it's really a whole different game.
Stuff in our house breaks immediately. I got them a special gaming chair, and I knew like as soon as I saw it, it was like you could adjust the angle of the back. I'm like, this is all done. Now they have to lean it against the couch.
Oh boy.
we do a lot of stuff for public, but one of the things we've done is we've made everything really easy to take apart. So the control panel comes off, the top of the control panel comes off. The PCBs all come out separately, and no screws, they slide out. The memory unit, the main unit, is a custom unit. It actually pops off.
That's cool.
We tried to do everything to make it easy. If something breaks, there's just these 3 wires. Here's instructions with photos. Send it back to us.
So what you're saying is you're the anti-Apple. I get it. All right.
Those parts are hard to come by. You're like, it's cool. Let me just hop over to Okinawa.
All right. Listen. I'm going to bring up the person of the day, which means those need to go away for a second. Is the person of the day is who couldn't it be besides John Harrison? Because this is pretty much an episode made in heaven for this guy who wrote a beautiful book on business, which he should totally link in the comments as well. Where am I going? Oh, I'm going here. And that's that. I'm also going to bring back Sam Glassenberg. Where am I going is like the story of my everyday.
What body part have you got on display now?
Yeah, what are we looking at?
Ooh, should we guess?
No.
No,
I'm not in this crowd. Are you kidding?
Looks like it's fine.
We have a game that's played entirely under X-ray, and so this game. So you zoom out, you can sort of see all the bones and everything because we're capturing the scattering of X-ray rays through the different tissues. But this is all about the heart. But you can't really see where you're going unless you inject this radio opaque toxic dye directly into the heart. This game is all about it's a puzzle game. You have to figure out what stents, balloons, drill bits to basically do surgery inside a live beating human heart to restore blood flow.
Wow, Michelle, this or Miss Pac-Man?
I like that a lot better than the colon.
Hey,
You have one
everybody has their favorites. I'm not judge anybody.
Don't judge me, Michael. I would have. By the way, my '80s game would have been probably Tron.
Yeah. I actually have a Tron cabinet.
We have a garage full of original arcades too. So yeah.
Oh, so Kate
Star Wars,
in the
Tron, maybe Pac-Man, which had the pinball machine built in.
Michael and Michelle, Kate in the comments wants to
we
know
do
how
both.
they can help market you.
Point people to the link. That's what I would say. DreamArcades.com.
Point to the link. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook. Yeah.
Buy yourself some arcades.
Get some cabinetry going. You can start with the 19. You could start with the 19 one. That's a small guy on the pile
and work your way up. Yeah,
to the 40.
And we're coming out with a bunch of lower price points this Christmas. We're kind of getting back into the build it yourself type stuff. So stuff starting at like $5.99 coming next year.
Oh my gosh.
Sam, when can people do a colonoscopy on one of these retro gaming systems? Like, you hook that up.
When will this become retro?
Can you imagine if you were like limited with just a joystick? Could you get that job done?
I mean, you'd be surprised.
We'll do custom controls and put it in a show. Yeah,
it's some of the devices that doctors use. I mean, the level of control is not much greater than a joystick, especially when they're doing endoscopic or surgical procedures.
Oh my gosh!
Or robotics. There's a chance.
So you're saying there's a chance? Oh my gosh! Listen, we have to do one other thing, which is near the very end of the show, we talk about what goes in your backpack, and the whole idea there is that we have to add something to your backpack, your metaphorical backpack, for the next 5 years. So how are people going to succeed in business? What's it going to take to make a business like a Level X? What's it going to be to turn Michael's obsession in collecting cabinets in the garage into something Michelle doesn't yell at him about as much? So these are the questions. What goes in the backpack? So I did. But really, what's going to happen, So let's start with Sam. Sam, what's going to go in people's backpacks to make the next 5 years better?
People's backpack, I can. I mean, I can tell you what goes in my backpack. I don't know what's generally going to go. I'm not going to tell anybody how to run their business or what to put in their backpack. I mean, for me, I would say for things like, things that are really important for me and teams at Level X are things like intellectual curiosity. And if you want to be a little sort of less existential than that, I'll say maybe like creative hobbies. I mean, this company sort of came out of a creative hobby. I ended up at Lucas because I was an engineer, but did animation as a hobby. I do a lot of 3D printing and, all sorts of animation and all sorts of things. And I generally find that whatever my current hobby is, I'm very lucky that often will end up being my next adventure, my next full-time adventure. So I'm going to say creative hobbies. Is that?
I love it.
It's
a good one. I love it. Michelle and Michael, you can have your own separate ones, or you guys can submit a team entry. It's up to you.
Well, I was thinking backpack. I was thinking an actual physical item. So I put Lazy Susan, but it's more of a metaphysical Lazy Susan to allow you to pivot quickly. That's one of the things is we started with kits. People wanted them pre-built, so we went to pre-built. So now we're going back to kits again. People ask for different things, which is why we do the claw machine. So that's one of the big things. I think as a small company, you have an advantage that you can just a lot faster than a big company can.
I like Lazy Susan. What do you have? What do you have for us, Michelle?
Oh, mine's not that good. I just set a rope, and that was so you could dig yourself out of a hole, or you could lasso your employees too. So it was a dual purpose thing.
Listen,
lassoing takes so much time. Maybe just.
I know. I have a kind of Twitter-sized question. You guys have to answer this in sort of Twitter link, just because of the time of our show. Tell me. Someone asked this question. I forget who. It might have been Cara Elena who asked the question. Way back, she said, "There's one thing about doing this because you went from here to here. There's another about actually standing up a whole company and getting people to make stuff the way you want to make it. Like Sam is a really creative, interesting guy, but having a team of people do what Sam wants them to do, and Michael and Michelle want them to do, is different. One sentence each about leadership." In this creativity meets something fun, but you got to get the job done. What does that look like? Maybe Sam first.
I mean, look, again, I can't speak. My personal experience has been, what I find fulfilling in life is enabling people who are more talented than I am. Right. So I started out at Lucas. I'm hired as an artist, but I don't have an art background. So I've got the most talented artists in the world working with me. How do I use my engineering skills so they can achieve their vision, because they are always going to be better artists than I will be. And then later on in my life, that just became, okay, it's not just engineering tools and, it's not just technology. How do we make sure technology doesn't get in the way of what they want to achieve? How do we make sure business doesn't get in the way of what they want to achieve? And that's, you want to have incredibly creative, talented people who are more creative and talented than you are. And you want to be there to enable them and make sure that the business does not get in the way of what they're capable of.
I like the answer. How about the Ware folk?
I completely agree with Sam. And to build on that, I always like people smarter than me. And we look for people who fit in well with our team. So they're, usually gamers. They're usually maybe they don't even fit in other businesses. They're really geeky guys who just really love gaming. We'll do employee events where everyone comes in, they'll play Dungeons and Dragons. They'll bring their N64. We'll do big gaming on the big screen. So we do a lot of, that's what kind of built it together, is all the guys know gaming. So they'll see something and they'll be like, hey, this isn't how I do it. I do this because I remember this game. And that really helps us a lot.
Now hiring nerds.
That's
we need you.
This is the
Girls
best episode
or
ever.
guys, so either one.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna wrap this up because we have to, but I'm gonna bring back what Naz said because it was kind of cool. He's over on YouTube watching us. He says, I remember my dad taking me to the basement at IBM headquarters to watch some engineers play asteroids on a mainframe in the 70s. I'll kind of one up you in a weird ass way, except it wasn't IBM headquarters. I played that old timey Star Trek game that you could play on mainframes, the one where you're like kind of coordinating and trying to figure out where the Klingon ship was. And we played it on a green and white paper printer. So I killed like a forest hunting down Klingons poorly.
Just let Nazim have his moment, can't you? Len, thanks for stopping by. Len is an author. We had him on last week, and he's fantastic. So thanks, everyone.
Incredible career-changing author, Len Joy.
Oh, yeah.
Well, so I told my mom that,